Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. We come to you from all around Australia, and today we are coming to you with a guest from Canberra. He is known as the Duke of Canberra. He is the head coach of Progression MMA, and he is Duke Didier. Thanks for joining us, Duke.
Thanks for having me, guys. Very exciting.
Awesome, man. I love the color scheme of your gym. I've not seen greens used in MMA gyms and stuff before, and I'm a fan of like Kawasaki motorbikes. That's a big part of my childhood, all that sort of stuff. That green really pops out at me, man. So well done. It looks awesome.
Thank you. Well, there was a bit of thought going into the green. So, firstly, my fight uniforms, I always wore black and green. So that was the first thing that came into it. And then I linked up with Pat Ratura at Fuji Mats. And he was awesome. And so I think we're the only ones in Australia with this green. So it sort of ticked two boxes for me. And then we're in Canberra territory down here. So the Canberra Raiders are black and green too. So it's
Beautiful.
It's definitely all tied in nicely, and we had a bit of time, and I put a bit of thought into how I want the gym to look, not just for what I want it to have inside of it. So I feel like if you've got a aesthetically pleasing gym, you're more likely to show up and train. So that was something that we had a bit of time to put a bit of thought
proven,
in.
Man. Like that is no joke. 100%. There's a lot of gyms that just don't put any effort in, and you just see they get the stragglers who show up, but they're not a nice environment. That's all the difference.
100%. Yeah, I've trained in all kinds of gyms all over the world, and look, the aesthetics don't make the place, but geez, they help. And that's the kind of thing I want. I want no barriers to come in to train, no excuses. And we've got aircon and heating, so there's no excuses. If it's cold, if it's hot, it's warm and welcoming, and it's pretty nice and fun to look at. So that was sort of my idea on that.
Turn on the aircon for the students. Come on, man.
Yeah, we're spoiling them here. We're spoiling them. Canberra's getting spoiled.
Love it, man.
Edward, you talked about the green popping out to you. What got my attention popping out is your shoulders, Duke. I mean, I sometimes get comments about my shoulders, but geez, tell us about your strength and conditioning training. What do you do? What's like a typical week look like for you in terms of your training?
Yeah, I'd love to. So my strength and conditioning took a bit of an overhaul about 2 years ago. And I linked up with the combat osteo, Luke Smith, down in Melbourne. He's running out of Renegade MMA and mixed osteo. So I initially came into him hobbling with probably the worst lower back pain. I didn't think I'd be able to compete anymore, so I was quite worried. Firstly, just about being able to keep ticking along. And not only did he help me with my chronic back pain, but he ended up taking over my strength and conditioning as well. And we've built up I'm a completely different version of what I was 3 years ago.
Wow.
I will do strength and conditioning. So I'll do strength 2 days a week, conditioning probably 1 or 2 days a week, on top of obviously your specific sport trainings. So I've always put a big emphasis. When I was younger, my father, he played for the Wallabies and the Brumbies in rugby union. And he was a prop, and if you're not sure about rugby positions, prop's the biggest one with the no neck. And in the 80s and the 70s, there weren't many lifting weights, and so he got his point of difference by lifting weights and being one of the strongest guys. And when I started out my judo career, when I was coming through, and when I started into my late teens, I sort of took the same approach. I might not have been the most technical, I might not have been the most gifted, but I became one of the strongest, and my defense was great. So that got my foot in the door on the international scene. And I put a big emphasis on strength and conditioning. I think it's, and even if you're not competing, I think it's the most important thing to just keep on moving. If you don't move, you die.
Yeah, I agree.
So what were you not doing any strength and conditioning before you went to see this guy, or what did it look like? How's it changed?
Yeah. So I was definitely doing strength and conditioning, but it was more of that sort of hypertrophy weights, where it was I was doing more of a bodybuilding style weights, which is, hey, it's proven you put on the muscle, but we started working on more specific movements for fighters. We were doing different blocks. He was putting me through, what was it? Where we're pushing. See, I'm not smart enough to break down what I was doing, and I was just doing what I was told.
That's all we have coaches. That's fine. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Hey, I tell you what, get Smitty on the podcast, because I'm not doing him justice here. But some of the stuff we were doing, he's taken from. combat sports all over the world. But he also took. I remember one thing he was saying. Oh, this is what the Chicago Bulls were doing in the '90s, and isometric. That's the word I was looking for. We're doing isometric holds.
Yeah.
We're doing uneven weights, so we'd have dumbbells hanging off the barbells. So it gets used to it's like you're moving a human. And it was when I was doing a Zercher squat, Zercher being across your arms, doing a Zercher squat with the uneven dumbbells hanging off the barbell.
Yeah.
It's the closest thing I've had to what I feel like when I'm sort of picking up a human. So I definitely put a lot of stock into what I learned down there with Smitty, and also I have the worst hips. I have a 80-year-old man hips. I saw my sports doctor, Mitch. He was shocked that I've got this far. He says I treat my body like a rental car. So I'm putting a lot more emphasis on recovery and also just mobility as a whole. So I'll do sauna and ice bath once a week. Try and do twice with the sauna, and mobility. I'm just trying to get these hips moving a little bit better. So.
Yeah. Are you in pain now, or as what you like? Where on the scale are you now?
So when I came to see Smitty, I was probably at a 9 out of 10 in pain. Like literally, couldn't stand while I was doing my boxing. I said, "This is out of control," and it was probably the worst it had got. And it was just because I'd come off that injury and coming back to a big training block down at Resilience when all the UFC guys were churning through there. So it was one of those, fight or flight sort of situations where I had to make sure I was good. And now I'd say I'm at probably a 2 or a 3. I still wake up very sore, but I have a cold shower every morning, and I feel that takes the inflammation out of me in the morning, helps me wake up, and it also takes that.
All three of us have cold showers every day in this.
Exactly. We're in the cult. Good. I'm glad you guys like it.
Duke's in Canberra, yeah? You're still doing that through their winters, or?
This will be my first winter in Canberra. I was down in South Melbourne until December, so. I did it all through Melbourne winter last year, and it helps. I know it helps. So it's hard. It's easier to do when you get an immediate result. It's not a long-term result, which it probably is, but I feel immediately better after I do it. So it's just about psyching yourself up. And I mean, I psych myself up to do a lot harder things than get a bit cold for in the morning. So it's all right. Yeah.
100%.
What with the back pain, right? I'm really fascinated about this because I had back pain until I was like a blue belt, and then I probably should be further along. I'm still a purple belt, but I've been doing it for a lot longer than a purple belt should have. So I had pain in my back in like a decade or something like that, right? And it's like it's jiu-jitsu for me that frees me up from back pain for some reason, right? I don't do any weights really, but it cured my back pain. What actually cured your back pain? Was it stopping doing weights the old way, or was it these new techniques you've got, or is it a combination of everything? Like, what do you think is the source of dealing with this back pain?
So exactly what changing my program was a big one. But I'd put the sort of the most down to I got treated by a leading osteo, every week, sometimes more, possibly more every couple of days, and having the same strength and conditioning coach as my my rehabilitation coach. Everything I was doing for these couple of years was tailored around not aggravating my back.
Right.
So with a lot of careful analysis and it wasn't done overnight, but and a lot of stretching and a lot of my own mobility. I think that was the big thing, and I also have started to identify what brings it on, which is I'm 6'4" and 105 kilos. When I take a long car drive, I know things are gonna flare up, so I have to just make sure things are in place and I'm doing my stretching and just basically overall just looking after yourself, and it definitely helps a lot more. And you're right, the more you move, usually the less it chocks up. So when I feel like I'm not doing as much, and the most important thing, I think, the second most important thing, so Luke was doing all this work on my back at Combat Osteo, Mixed Osteo, but I was going home to a bad mattress. So I got a much better mattress. I got a sleeping duck mattress. So all the work he was doing wasn't getting undone when I went to bed that night.
Interesting.
And a firm mattress made all the difference. And that was referred to me by another judo player, Liam. Liam Park at Resilience, and he's a big fella too, and he had back issues, and he said it changed sort of his trajectory as well. And yeah, I'd put down very, very important to when you have a lower back pain, just check what mattress you're sleeping on.
Very interesting.
And Duke, like we obviously you've had your injuries and your issues, but you're a really accomplished grappler, really accomplished fighter. Anton, can you like put into YouTube and share your screen with maybe some of the stuff that Duke's done? So you've been on one championship?
Yeah, I've signed to them for a 6-fight deal, so I'll hopefully be back onto them once I find my feet after this gym. And yeah, so I fought in one.
And yeah, you've been on BOA, you've been on a heap of other grappling cards. I think BOA was where I saw you've had a couple of like really great fights. I don't know which one are we going to share. We probably should have checked this before.
I'm just checking his record at the moment. So 8-2-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, an Aussie.
8-2. My fight on one, I was a split decision loss. I'll be diplomatic and say, yeah, I thought I won that one. I took it on 5 days notice, and I had, 2.5 rounds of control time. But I didn't listen in the rules meeting where I thought the knees to the head were outlawed again in one, but they were still in. So I went for a double leg near the end there, and I copped a couple of knees to the head. And in one, if they think you're closer to finishing the fight, they'll score it the whole. They don't score it round by round. They score it the whole fight. So I controlled him for 2.5 rounds, and then they stood me up in the third round, and then he landed a couple of knees, and they've cooked me there.
Wow.
But yeah. So I've been doing mixed martial arts for over 10 years now, but about 25 years. 25 years I've been doing combat sports. I started the judo.
You didn't have.
So you also went to the Commonwealth Games, Duke, for judo, yeah, 2014.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow.
Yeah, that's correct. I went to the Commonwealth Games. I was an alternate for the Olympics in Rio. I went to 3 world titles for judo. I got to travel the whole world in judo. I went to all the crazy countries. I went to Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan twice in 1 year. Tunisia, all over Japan. I've been to Japan 20 times.
Wow.
Europe, Asia. I fought on 6 continents. So I've before I even entered the jiu-jitsu space, and I'd already sort of had my fair share of combat sports experience, and that was obviously why I got to go through the ranks reasonably quickly. I was not rushed by any means. I think it took me still 11 or 10 or 11 years to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu, but I was really, really, really insistent that I wanted to compete at black belt. I wanted to see how I went, because I hated that I'd win a colored belt and it just didn't feel like I was really, winning, because it's sort of like winning a 3rd grade rugby game or sort of something like that. I didn't like winning when I saw there was other people that were better than me competing, and I wasn't even allowed to have a crack at them. And so this year at the Pan Pacs was a really, really good eye opener for myself. I in the gi, I didn't do very well. I lost, and then in no gi in my division, I lost to Daniel Schuart. First time he subbed me. It's I lost by points, 3 points to him, one fight, and then we've had a draw in the gi, and then he subbed me. So fair play to Daniel. And then I was like, oh, what am I? And then I lost to Euros as well. I went, what am I even doing here? And then I went in the open, and I said to my coach Ninos, I said, I don't even know. You're only allowed 2 people in the open for black belt adults. Like, you don't waste it on me. And he said, no, I think you can do it. And I went in there and got a win over Jesse Smith, Anton Manenko, and then George Soteropoulos in the final, and won the Pan Pacs at the adults no gi open. So that made me sort of cement where I wanted to be in jiu-jitsu, and it sort of ticked another box for me, sort of saying that that's the 3rd combat sport that I can truly say that I'm competitive at a high level, which was really, really assuring to me as I'm about to I've opened my academy, so I want to be able to practice what I preach.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. And it says here in your history that you nearly had a fight with Jacob Malkoon. He's the guy. He's in the UFC now, right? That guy.
Yeah. Well, I was not more. I think I was close as you can ever get. We got to the weigh-in at the AOS Arena. I was defending my brace Australian title. That was before brace was on UFC Fight Pass back then. That was sort of the main, before Eternal and Hex were really, brace was sort of the main deal. And I was Australian light heavyweight champion.
Oh, we just lost you.
Oh, we lost your audio. Oh, there you go.
Oh, we still don't have you back.
Oh, we can't hear you, Duke.
Duke, hold on. We don't have you. We don't have you.
Maybe you press mute, and now we need you to unmute.
No, I think you just got a call.
Oh, yeah. But usually the video loses.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Have I got you back?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry, wait. All right,
Bryce.
now there's music in the background.
Oh, really? It's not on my end.
Yep.
Can you hear us?
And you answered the call, and you've
Gee,
got.
we're the masters of the technical issues, aren't we, Anton? We had a couple last time as well. What's going on?
I'll just
You
tell
got us now?
keep us entertained.
You can put on the shirt again otherwise. No?
That's right.
Normally it's only at the start there's an issue.
Oh, now we've got his music.
I can hear your music now.
Can you hear the music?
Yeah, no,
That's so weird.
now we can hear you. Can you hear
All right.
us?
Let me put this back on.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
I like it. Theo, don't edit this out, bro. This is awesome.
We're just talking to our editor.
Yeah.
It's all part of the authenticity of this podcast.
That's right.
Can you edit that out, or is this?
We can.
can.
We will. It's nice, man. This is
It adds to it.
Okay. Sorry, I've turned my phone off. I thought it was on Do Not Disturb. Yeah, with Jacob, we got to the weigh-in when I was fighting Jacob Malcoon. I was on weight. Everyone was on weight, and then the commission called it off, cancelled the whole show.
Right.
Because the promoter hadn't registered some of the fighters, and Brace actually went under straight after that show. So I didn't get paid. A lot of people didn't get paid. I was like, I don't have any resentment to anyone, but yeah, it was the fight that never happened. I had a few that sort of fell through in that short space of time.
Yeah.
It's very messy, the regional scene. There's not much accountability, and there's no sort of assurance. So it's that between getting to that international contract and starting out after your amateur career, it's a very, very hard slog. And I know a couple of fighters in that stage now. You may see them. It's probably the hardest of any position, because when you're starting out as a pro, it's all new and it's all exciting. Once you're at that, especially if you've got a loss on your record. So if you're at that 6-1, 7-1, you're at that level, but you haven't got a look in yet. And it's very hard to get a fight when you're at that level. Everyone's picking and choosing. So I was very relieved once I knew I wouldn't have to fight regionally again. And my friends that I trained with down in Melbourne, I hope that happens to all of them, because I don't want to see, you're working other jobs and barely scraping by because you've got to prioritize your training, and training's at daytime usually for pros. So you're not able to just work a normal job. I have a marketing degree, and I worked full time before I moved to Melbourne, and I was forced to sort of initially work a sort of a low level, tele sales job. And then after that, I was able to move into coaching at Complete MMA Endearment. And then sort of as someone new to Melbourne, I was able to quite quickly actually build up sort of a good reputation as a coach and able to run privates, but that doesn't necessarily happen for everyone. So
there's this really good book called The Dip, right? It's a really little read, but it kind of just summarizes what you're talking about. It's like things that are worthwhile achieving in life. They start off and you feel great, right? And then it gets really hard, and a lot of people will quit. In fact, the whole process is designed to just have so many people quit that only the best make it through. And the most resourceful and the ones who are willing to bust themselves and make sacrifices, the dip will have you quit, because that's the nature of the design. And that's why the people at the top get the big money and the great results and all of that stuff, because they didn't quit, And
I like that.
Quitting, man. Yeah.
I like that, because that's exactly what I've experienced. I've experienced that sort of twice now. I did that in judo once and MMA, and it's nice that I'm sort of at the end of the dip, because I never was the most talented, but I did stick it out a lot longer than some of the guys that were more talented than me. I've seen many talented combat sports athletes come and go, and the fact that I just remained consistent and dedicated, outworked my talent, and to the point now where I sort of was able to catch up, and now I do have a bit of talent. Through years and years of just stubbornness and not pissing off.
That is it. There's a name for this
And-
podcast in there somewhere. I like it a lot.
Yeah. You always want him to find a tagline, so I think you've just given us one.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so, what took you to Canberra? Like you said that you came to Melbourne. Where was that from? And then how did you end up in Canberra?
Yeah, most people.
So I'm born.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm born, bred and fed Canberra. So I grew up in Canberra. I lived in Canberra till I was 27, 28, and then
Okay, and then you moved to Melbourne, and then now you come
yeah.
back.
So I did the majority of my start of my career, all my judo, all of that was basically in Canberra, sort of. And I think that, but the issue, and this is what took me to Melbourne, was I only had one real main training partner, and that was Ben Edwards. He's a K1 kickboxer. He was top 5 in Glory. And he was turning pro at the same time that I sort of was trying to make a run at MMA. So he would run my striking, I would run his grappling. Sort of a little match made in heaven for a little while there, but then it got to the point where that's not enough, and I needed high level grapplers, and he needed high level strikers. So to work with that, so I had the relationship with Daniel Kelly very, very long ago. He was I met him, I think it would have been 2006 or 2005. I met Daniel on a judo trip I was in the junior Australian team to the US Open. And we ended up being opponents for a little while on the regional scene. And then Daniel took over the junior Australian judo team in about 2010. And then in 2016, when I was aiming, or 2015, when I was looking to, I was on the Australian team, and I was looking to qualify for Rio. Daniel sort of took ownership of my judo program, and at that same time, Daniel was in the UFC. So once that all happened, I was able to Daniel was giving me the push to come down to Melbourne, and I eventually, it took him about 3-4 years, but I eventually made the leap from going from the big fish into a little pond to a tadpole in a big pond. And I look, honestly, it was probably the best thing that I've ever done in my life. So I saw a lot of hardship, and I probably there was times when, oh my goodness, like honestly, and I don't want to make this a negative and sad podcast, but there was times when I not only just regretted moving down, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with my whole life, and didn't know I was in a pretty bad place. I had a lot of injuries. I came down there and I was immediately plagued by injuries. I had torn tricep. I had some really, really serious blood clot issues. And they sort of took up a large part of my COVID when I was with those blood clot issues. Eventually I found an excellent surgeon, and that's a whole nother story, but we got them fixed. And then that was what got me to Melbourne. And then now I sort of immersed myself. And I was just living and breathing MMA. I didn't have another job. I was just coaching, and being down there with that level of fighters. And I always find you're the example of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And down there, I was spending my time with some of the most determined and successful athletes in the country. So it can't be, a little bit of that had to rub off surely. So
absolutely,
it was very good, and I definitely got the rub.
That's the dip right there.
We have had Dan. We've had Dan and Callum Potter on the show previously. If anyone listening wants to go back and listen to any of our old ones, so I assume they're the sort of people you're talking about, Duke.
I had Dan and Cal, and one of my best mates down there in Melbourne was Jimmy Crude, and
we should get him on. Let's go.
Get Jimmy Crude on. He's a bloody legend. And then and I was able to, I had Jimmy in my corner for the one fight, and I was in Jimmy's corner over in Jacksonville. And this is the kind of experience and life, and and also you build each other up. And instead of sitting here and talking about the weather or something, you're sitting here and you're breaking down various martial arts techniques, strategies, and coming up with different outsets. And literally my whole perspective, especially in the last 6 to 8 months, has just changed. I spend so much time just trying to make not just my martial arts better, but myself and my life and my outlook. And that's just basically rubbed off from those around me. So it's a good culture to be around. And that's those boys at Australian Elite Team as well. It's just good people just want you to do well, and then there's no way you can go down to such a positive place like that and not be a positive person yourself.
You're amazing, man. I'm fascinated to know now with all of this kind of transformation that's going on, and your father teaching you be the strongest, right? Has that mindset, and I'm not saying that mindset's good nor bad, because what he did was he differentiated himself. He became an apple in a sea of oranges. You know what I mean? More than just saying strength is everything.
Yes.
But for you, does strength trump technique, for example? I don't know. It sounds like it kind of does or not. Like,
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me this now. If you asked me 3 years ago, I'll be like, you just be the strongest. That's it. But you know what I'll say, and I'll say, it's interesting, especially in jiu-jitsu culture, when someone says, "Oh, you're just using strength," where I can't touch my toes, and I'll never complain if someone just uses flexibility. So I always think that that's a funny little side note, considering I've got chronic flexibility issues, and there's guys that can put their knees behind the head, and it is a clear advantage. When it comes to is strength the most important thing? No, I don't think it is. I do think mobility is probably the most important thing. And if your body's moving at peak, which may not mean you're the strongest, that's okay. And I did that. I've lowered my strength. So I used my max bench press when I was in my peak, being the strongest. I'd be able to bench 180 kilos. I can bench about 120, 130 now, but I can do 20 chin-ups. And that's the kind of difference in sort of ideal, and and on the hex squats and hex deadlifts and the Zercher squats, and that kind of outlook when in my strength training is completely different and a little bit more holistic than it was prior. So, and I wish I had this during my judo career. I wish I had this knowledge and this outlook, but I didn't. I used to just lift weights and
Hulk
pump iron.
snaps. Yeah.
And I've got a lot of tendon issues because of that. But anyway.
Got it, man.
We are heading towards the end of our time here, but we pretty much always ask our guests how they got started in jiu-jitsu. So for you, was it kind of organic, like you started judo first, and then tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started judo when I was 8. That was at the advice of, so I used to hang out at a lot of rugby change rooms, obviously, as my dad was playing. And the old strapper there was a black belt in judo, and he said, do some judo. It'll help your rugby. And I was very lucky that the school I went to had a judo program at Morris College there in Canberra. So I started judo when I was 8 or 9. And I was also very lucky that the moment I walked in the door, my coach, Tom Hill, and his brothers, Matt and Stephen. Tom won an Commonwealth Games gold medal and went to Sydney Olympics. And Stephen coached at this Sydney Olympics. And so their whole family was sort of high level judo. So that kept me involved in judo and high level very, very, very quickly. And then the transition over from judo sort of started to MMA. I've said, I want to fight. I love, judo's not a very glorious sport, whereas MMA I've got a pro wrestling love, so I like the lights, and that's why I'm glad I got to fight in one, because it's there. The entrance out there was like something out of WrestleMania, and I love that, and I love getting sort of judo. I would travel around the world and fight these monsters, and no one would care if I win or lose, other than my close circle of friends and family. Whereas I could fight and a whole town would be behind me when I fight in mixed martial arts. And then obviously there's so much more reward financially, and I just think more glory fighting in mixed martial arts. So that led to me how I got into jiu-jitsu. The adjustments for the gi to no gi is one thing. The adjustments for judo to MMA were huge. So there's no gi judo. Well, there is. I do it here, but for me to make the adjustments, I needed to do jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is much closer to MMA than judo will ever be. So I've got a great base in judo, and a base that not many people are willing to put 15, 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears into. But I started doing jiu-jitsu then, and like anything, I feel if the best way to get better at something is to compete. I'll compete at the state titles all the way through to. I've got a super fight against Josh Saunders, the ADCC veteran, on Fusion in March. I love competing, and any chance I get for the rest of my life, I'll be dragging my old soul onto the mat and just doing what I can. So that's what got me mainly just to make the adjustments for MMA. But now I've got a whole love for jiu-jitsu as an entity as itself, because jiu-jitsu is going to be the one that I can do until I'm 80. not MMA and not judo. I've sprung the floor here. There's high density foam under here, so I can definitely do a little bit more judo, but mixed jiu-jitsu is the best one because you can pick the pace, you can pick the partners. It's a lot less impact on the body, and I also feel like it's a thinking man's game, so I can actually really find sort of the avenues I want to explore. I've barely even gone down the leg lock sort of path yet, and these are the sort of things that when I retire from MMA, I'm looking forward to sort of, taking new branches in my martial arts journey and seeing what unfolds. And I also, I'm not too handy on the mats now, so I'm also handy, like looking forward to seeing who I can test my skills against in the next couple of years on the jiu-jitsu mats.
Man, that is
awesome.
I
That's good for Australian jiu-jitsu. I like to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like my parents bang on about how tennis is something you can play till you die, right? And I'm like, I feel like that about jiu-jitsu as well. Like I feel like if you go to World Masters or something like that, there are like 80-year-old dudes and dudettes getting out there and throwing down, albeit slowly, and but they're still going for it in their own way. And this is the thing, you can do that. So I'm agree. How old are you now, man?
I agree. I'm 33.
Okay, cool. Wow,
33.
Awesome.
So 33. I feel 33, feeling 73, but no, I'm all right. I'm 33, and honestly, I feel like I'm in my prime of my career as a sort of a heavyweight, light heavyweight. We've got a couple of years left. My old man didn't play for the Wallabies till I think he was 31, 32. And like I said, I wasn't the talent and prospect that sort of just popped out of nowhere. I've just been edging my way towards this. So I think if I've got all the skills and I've got all the things in one piece now. So now I get to just enjoy it, and that's all I do now. I just enjoy every moment of it. It's my job now, so I get to share it. I get to share the knowledge that I spent with a lot of sacrifice, and hopefully, the next generation don't have to sacrifice as much as I did, because I want to put it all in one place for them here in Canberra. So that's one thing I'm enjoying, and I'm enjoying coaching just probably more than I ever thought I would. So it's definitely a rewarding thing, jiu-jitsu. So
let's go in a road trip and dojo storm.
Please do,
everybody, and let's get down there and have some fun. Roll with you. I'm down.
Yeah, I'd love that. Honestly, there's always a sport on the mat for you guys here, and for anyone traveling through. I know Canberra isn't the hottest destination for people in Melbourne, but if you're ever coming through, come check it out, because this facility's a little bit different and pretty flash. So
it talks about people like you there, man. How can it be a bad place? Look at you. You're a bundle of positive energy, man. So yeah.
Exactly. Hey, I'm not the only one. There's plenty of good guys here. You just got to come and find them.
Cool.
Awesome. We've only got about 3.5 minutes to go, Duke. Do you have any parting thoughts, any final words for our listeners? Any advice?
I always say the same thing. Is just stay consistent and don't quit. That's what I always say to anyone. Even when you feel like it's not getting anywhere, you are getting somewhere. Even if you feel like you're going backwards, well, that means you're just getting used to a bit of adversity. So I honestly think and jiu-jitsu is I'm almost a little bit pushy with my mates, that once I get them involved, I sort of just keep pulling them back in, then I don't have to worry. So yeah, that's what I would say, and I would say enjoy it, and I would say always be nice.
Wise words from Duke Didier, everybody. What a fucking legend you are, man. Sorry, I don't normally swear. I'm super pumped.
That's okay.
Thank you so much. So we've got this episode out in about 2 weeks or so. If you could share it on your social media, that would really help grow our audience. And anybody, if you're ever in Canberra, head down there, Progression, and you'll be well looked after. And good luck for Fusion coming up in a couple of weeks. So yeah, we'll be cheering for you from down here.
Always. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Awesome.
Man.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.